What's up, Lost Boys? Here we are for our fantasy recap video for week one. What a week it was, guys. Fantasy starting off hot, including last night's game, ending Tim losing by 2 yards. It was a long shot for him to come back before the game, but with McCaffrey getting ruled out, he had a chance as guys getting fed the ball. Well, screw getting fed the ball. We're talking about kick the ball. Moody coming through with monster points, getting I think like 26 points, maybe more than that. Debo comes through. Purdy kind of takes a dump, and he loses by 2 yards. Debo had a touchdown called back earlier in the night by a bullshit holding call. Cost him the game. Big loss. Huge win for Denny. Denny squeaks by. Tim takes the L. This could have something to do with playoffs later in the season, so remember this game. The other games this week were also so-so. We're going to start with the other close game of the week. Our game of the week, Brothers Grimm. It looked like Jace had this game in the bag after the Sunday noon and 3 o'clock games. Josh's team fell on its face. None of his players scored any touchdowns. Josh Allen came through for him. Jaden Daniels came through for him. That's what he drafted his team for, but Jace was in the driver's seat. He just needed a decent game from his Lions, and they couldn't perform. Goff, Amon-Ra, and Laporta, they just didn't show up, especially Amon-Ra with around 2 points. Lowest output I can remember him having it. That game was lower scoring than people thought, and when the Lions did score, they ran it in. Josh was down by 4.5 going into Monday Night Football, and Breece Hall got that pretty much almost in the first quarter. So Josh takes down Jace, beats him by 12. The other matchups we had this week, Learning Computer played Barreto. Matt scored the 3rd lowest points in the league this week and still won by about 45 points. That shows you how awful Justin's team is. I said it coming out of the draft. The 2 worst teams in the league were Justin and Ryan, and we saw it already in week 1. I mean, Barreto, his quarterbacks that he drafted strong, Mahomes, Burrow, they didn't show up. His running backs, all were awful. Mostert, Swift, Chubbard. He didn't even have any wide receivers. And the one that he did have was Puka, who's now out for 4 weeks. Justin's team was bad. And somehow after week 1, it got worse. It's going to get pretty nasty for Barreto this year. He gets smoked by Matt. Matt's team didn't look very good either, but it didn't matter. He got the dub. We'll see how it is moving forward. He did maybe lose Jordan Love for 2 to 4 weeks. Who knows how long that's going to be. Next, Llama Drama versus Titty Biscuits. Llama, no show again. We knew this was going to happen. His team's not very good, but, I mean, he lost by over 30 points, and Pat didn't even have McCaffrey. I mean, Pat had the #1 pick, get him a 0, and he still won by 30 points, if that tells you anything about this matchup. So, Pat gets the much-needed dub. Ryan gets the L. I think there's going to be more L's for Justin and Ryan going forward in the season. We'll see if any of them can step it up and, use that fantasy football IQ. But it's tough sledding for both of those guys. And last but not least, based on the matchups this week, we had Cass take down the Titty Sucker 4000. This one had a good start with the Chiefs on Thursday. Worthy getting Cal off to a fast start, outscoring Rice. Rice still looked great for Cass, but Worthy looked dominant. And then after that, Cass just did what he did last year. He kept his team rolling, which is exactly what he did. The Baker to Mike Evans combo looks like it's going to be potent this year once again. Cass dominated with that. Baker 4 touchdowns. What are we doing here? He has another great matchup this week, so jackpot for Cass there. Tyreek did Tyreek things. Slow start. Must have been from the handcuffs, the rust wearing off. And then boom, 80-yard touchdown. Tyreek doing Tyreek things. Aaron Jones gets a touchdown. Kyron Williams gets a touchdown. Jerome Ford gets a touchdown. I mean, Cass's randos just get touchdowns. That's what happens for the guy, and that's why he destroys Cal. And speaking of destroying Cal, Ka'imi Fairbairn also helped Cass. 17 points from your kicker. This is the most points I've ever seen kickers score in fantasy in a week in my life. Cass had to be writhing in pain this week because kickers were putting up 17, 18, 20 points like it was nothing this week. So crazy kicker week. I read this was the least amount of passing touchdowns ever in week 1. So I don't know what happened this week, but off quarterbacks were worse than I'd ever seen them. Or if it was defenses that were really good, but either way, kickers ruled the day this week in fantasy. On Cal's side, Caleb Williams took a dump, looked really, really bad. Hopefully he can get things rolling. He has a big game next week against Houston that we'll talk about here in just a second in the matchups. Bijan, I called it, Bijan was playing Pittsburgh, best defense in the league, so Bijan was going to have some trouble this week. We saw it. Cal's team's looking okay, but he still did only score 128 points, so we'll see if he can get back on the rock. So that's a recap of this week's game. So far, standings after 1 week, you have Cass, Denny, Josh, Pat, Matt, all with the wins, followed by Tim with the 2-yard loss in 6th place. He's put up 161 points. He's still lost. I mean, that's a bad beat across the board for Tim. He not only lost by 2 yards, but he also scored the 3rd most points. So if he would have played almost anyone else, he would have won. But Tim in 6th, Jace, Titty Sucker, Llama, Game of Pones, Barretto. So here we are. We're going to go into week 2, guys. We got some big matchups this week. We're going to start with my game of the week this week, and I'm going with Denny versus Jace, actually. Denny versus Jace is going to be an interesting one. I almost went with a battle of 1-0 teams, but I went with this one because I think this one's going to be much closer. Jace's team I really, really like. He had a tough loss this week against Josh. His Lions didn't perform. But they have Tampa Bay coming into Detroit, so it's in the Dome. And we saw last week Tampa Bay can score, so that means Detroit's going to have to score. Jalen Hurts showed that he can still Philly's offense is still pretty good. Last week ran through Saquon, but that's not going to be every single week. Atlanta's offense is pretty, so that should be a high-scoring game. And the other team that Jace lives and dies by is Green Bay. They're playing Indianapolis. It's in Green Bay. So, Jace's team overall looks really, really good. Odunze's hurt. He's going to miss a couple weeks, so that hurts Jace. ETN plays Cleveland D, which is going to be brutal. So, Jace is in a rough spot. Denny, on the other hand, Herbert looked pretty smeh because all the Chargers want to do is run. Carolina defense. Stafford, though, great matchup for Denny. Stafford plays Arizona, and I think that's going to be a high-scoring game. CeeDee Lamb, and his #1 pick in the draft, got signed right after our fantasy draft. Great pick by Denny. He plays New Orleans. I don't know how that's going to be. New Orleans defenses could be good, but the Cowboys just look really good right now on offense. Really, efficient. So we'll see if CeeDee Lamb was the one that benefits from that. But in general, Denny's team is really good. I liked it. I loved it after the draft. I said he had the best draft. He scored the 2nd most points in week 1, and you saw it again. Baltimore's going to be pissed after the Chiefs game. They're playing Raiders, which Raiders suck. And they're going to probably blow them out, which means Derek Horse-Turd Hair is going to get a lot of carries. I'm going to go with Denny this week, strictly because I think Derrick Henry has his first big game as a Raven. And also, like I said, that Rams game, Denny got a steal with Cooper Kupp, especially with Puka being out. Cooper Kupp's going to be back to old Cooper Kupp. As long as Cooper Kupp stays healthy, guys, he's going to be a top 3 wide receiver. And Denny got him late in the draft. So I'm going with Denny this week. We'll see if Jace's Lions can step it up and get him a victory. Next matchup we're going to do, Cass versus Pat. Battle of 1-0 teams. Unfortunately for Pat, I don't think this game's going to be that close. And I really like Pat's team, but he's in a weird situation. First off, we don't know if Christian McCaffrey's going to play this week again. It was very, very shady how they kind of kept that out from all owners until right before kickoff. Would have been nice as a Jordan Mason owner to know that on Friday, but that's just me. Anyway, we don't know if McCaffrey's going to play. They might sit him. They're playing against the Vikings, so they could get that victory without him. And then we don't know if T. Higgins is going to play, and these are 2 guys for Pat. They say that they don't think T. Higgins is going to play this week against the Chiefs, so he might be down 2 guys. Keenan Allen's been a bit iffy, so Pat's team's a little rocky right now, but you never know. His team is really good overall. DK, Kirk, his 2 quarterbacks could save. Like I said Lamar's going to have a big day. On the flip side, Cass, he already has a great team, but the matchups Cass has are just going to be too much for Pat to overcome. Kyler plays the Rams. I already talked about that game, how it was going to be high scoring. But Baker and Detroit, I already talked about that game, how I think it's going to be high scoring. Baker and Mike Evans going to have another connection. It's indoors, so you know there's going to be a lot of touchdowns in that game. That's going to benefit Cass. And then his boy Tyreek, they play Thursday night against Buffalo. So you have two teams with very crappy defenses, but man, can those teams score on offense. I see that game being a really, really high scoring game. Everyone on both of those teams getting a lot of fantasy points, including Tyreek Hill. I just think it's too much for Pat to overcome with all those games high scoring. I mean, Kyren Williams with that Rams game. So it's going to be close, but I really think Cass's matchups, all of his guys are playing really crappy defenses. And I think Cass, once again, back-to-back weeks, he puts up the most points again. So Cass keeps rolling. He's going to be 2-0. Next, we're going to go with Tim versus Barreto. This one's going to be pretty much over before it begins. I mean, Justin lost his second best player in Puka Nacua. He's going to have to find someone to replace him. The only chance Justin has this week is Kelsey. If Kelsey comes out and puts up 30 points, that means Mahomes has a monster day, and that means Justin has a chance. Other than that, his team is awful. Pittman, I wasn't on that bandwagon at the draft. He showed why. Godwin looks pretty good, which is great. He's going to get some good points from him. I mentioned that game before, but Jordan Addison's questionable. He'll probably miss this week. Chuba Hubbard didn't even look like the lead back. They were giving it to Miles Sanders. Plus, they're playing the Chargers, who have a really good defense. I mean, Justin's team's just awful. As a Chiefs fan, we're hoping he gets 1 billion points from Mahomes. So we're hoping Mahomes and Kelsey connection for Justin. But Tim, on the other hand, Purdy's playing against Minnesota. Their defense is not very good. So Purdy's going to do well. Trevor Lawrence is Justin's also, because he's playing Browns. Browns, they're pretty damn good defense. So we'll see how that affects Tim with Trevor Lawrence. But and same with Justin Jefferson. So we'll see what happens there. But I just think Tim's team's just way better. I mean, Gibbs is playing Tampa Bay. That's a high-scoring game. He does what. A-Chain already injured. I doubt he plays this week, so Tim's going to have to find a replacement for that. Dobbs, Mixon. Tim's has some rough matchups this week. Don't get me wrong. And with Addison hurt, with A-Chain hurt, he's got some injuries as well. I just think Justin's team is that bad. So Tim gets the dub this week, gets that win that he should have got last week by 2 yards. Next game we're going to do is Matt versus the other turd in our league, Ryan. Now, Matt last week was pretty much a turd. I mean, he put up 120 points and he got the victory. This game is going to be a good chance for Ryan to get his victory. I mentioned that Miami game for Ryan. Tua is going to put up a good amount of points. Rodgers is going to be super pissed after this game. He's playing Tennessee. I can see the Jets coming out and Rodgers going nuclear, which could help him. As a Chiefs fan, we hope Jamar Chase, though, does not have a good week this week. Sorry, Ryan. I don't really know when I'm looking at the matchups. I really like Ryan's team this week, but on the flip side, excuse me. I think Matt's team is better. So do you go with the matchups or do you go with the team here? That's the close one. I mean, Matt has Dak Prescott, but it's a tough New Orleans D. Deshaun Watson, I hate the guy and he sucks. Hopefully he gets benched soon. We'll see. Drake London, Philly's cornerbacks are secondary, one of the worst in the league. So I finally think Drake London has a big week. Saquon's going against Atlanta. Saquon looks like a workhorse. I'm gonna give the edge to Matt. I think Matt still wins, but it's way closer than what last week was for Ryan. Ryan's team shows improvement, makes this a really big ball game. I think the difference of this week is going to be London. I think London's going to have over 20 plus points and it's going to put Matt over the edge this week. And the last game we have this week is Josh versus Cal, the titty sucker versus GG well played. Cal got off to a good start last week and his team kind of just fell on its face. And he has a monster game this week between the Bears and the Texans because he has both quarterbacks going. CJ Stroud versus Caleb Williams. It's in Houston, so it's in a dome. You know Stroud plays insane in domes. He plays insane in Houston. Cal has the connection, Nico and CJ Stroud. Josh is in trouble with that matchup. Caleb Williams is going to have to be thrown because I don't think that the Bears D, as good as it was, can keep Houston in check. So Cal should be at some garbage time from Caleb Williams. So it's a good start for him. I mentioned how terrible Philly's defense was. It's going to be a big game for Bijan Robinson. But other than that, I mean, Cal's team, we'll see. Xavier Worthy, we hope he does awesome in week 2. He could. He's awesome. So big game from him maybe. But Singletary, who knows? And Marvin Harrison's got to perform. I mean, what are we talking about? 1 catch for 4 yards. He's playing against the Rams, and I said how high scoring that game was. I see Harrison having a big game. On the flip side, Josh has to get off to a monster start on Thursday night with Josh Allen. He built this team around his quarterbacks and his running backs. They carried him in week 1. They need to carry him again now. Allen's got to have 25-plus points Thursday night. Jaden Daniels playing against the Giants. He's got the Scary Terry connection. Giants have an awful defense. Jaden Daniels is going to try to get into the win column in that game. Kamara's playing against Dallas D. They might have to dump it off to him. And Brees, like I mentioned, Tennessee could go off. I actually think this matchup is going to be insanely close. I like both teams' matchups a lot. I'm going to give the edge to Josh. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I think this game's going to be even across the board. I think it comes down to the 2 rookies, actually, Jaden Daniels versus Caleb Williams. My prediction is whichever guy outscores the other one, that team will win. If Williams outscores Daniels, Cal wins, and vice versa. So that's my prediction for that game. I think because Washington's playing the Giants, then Jaden Daniels is going to have a little better game than Williams, and I think that's going to give him the victory, guys. So those are our previews for this week, guys. Pretty interesting week 1 fantasy-wise. It was really, really close, but not that exciting. Quarterbacks didn't really play well. Studs didn't, especially stud wide receivers, did not show up this week. So let's hope this week we can get back in normal fantasy play. Everyone's studs can come through for us, and we can get some more really, really close games. So good luck, guys. Hope everyone stays healthy. Go Chiefs. Go Bears. Go Mizzou. Everyone will be happy. Have a great day.